بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته everyone. I hope that you're well. أهلا وسهلا. We've had a slight break. Last week I was traveling and we could not have our regular live session. So we're having it this week. Wonderful to be here once again. The weather was really cold last week, extremely cold as I was traveling. This week seems to be a little bit more mild. The good news is, of course, it's getting a little bit warmer, and the days here in the UK are starting to get a little bit longer. Bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, alhamdulillah. So at least there's some positive news. We've also had some developments in the world, broadly speaking, in terms of the Muslim world and what's impacting the Muslim world. The ICJ ruling with regards to Israel and Gaza. Hopefully, it'll be the beginning of a major shift in thinking about global affairs, which affects all of us. Or none of us are immune for what's happening in the world. And we've talked about it in previous sessions as well. I've also managed to damage my knee, my cruciate ligament, so I am a little bit in pain, which explains why I was a little bit late in joining and just not as quick as I perhaps was. So I had to join a little bit later for that reason. So wonderful to be here, and let's take some questions. Let's have a look. So Roshan Azhar. Salam wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. What is the best way to understand the Sharia laws properly? Whoa, that's a heavy question, Roshan. Straight away on a Friday evening, any books that come to mind? So there's a number of things in your question that I think require unpacking. When you talk about Sharia laws, I don't know what you mean by Sharia laws. Just keep it Sharia. So, Sharia, how do we understand divine revelation? How do we practice divine revelation? So, number one, you need to study with somebody or you need to join a system where you can learn it. So, you need to know, awalan, without a shadow of doubt, Arabic. You need to know Arabic, so you need to learn the language really, really well, find an excellent teacher. You need to learn some grammar, you need to learn some logic, you need to learn some basic reasoning skills, you need to learn language theory. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says something or the Prophet says something in the hadith, do we take it as a general? Is it taken as a specific command to a specific group of people? How do we make sense of all of that? So that's why it's very, very important to learn from a qualified institute or a qualified teacher, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Once you've done that, then you read Quran, you read Hadith, you read Usul, you read all these sciences, and you read as much of them as possible. Once you've done that and you graduated, then you continue reading advanced texts in these subjects because the syllabus will give you the basics. So one should not do 6 years and think they've become an alim. Rather, one should think that 6 years, I've got the basic tools, now I need to develop myself. So one then goes about gaining expertise in these fields, which is the next stage for him or her. And then they read the advanced texts, which are really advanced. So we're talking about texts that allow you to think about the spirit of the Sharia. Once you've learned the rules, the spirit of a Sharia, for example, Ihya Ulumuddin, for example, Futuhat of Ibn Arabi, for example, Hujjatul al-Baligh of Shah Waliullah Dehlawi. These are really advanced books, and many others, many others. I've talked about them before. And then being able to appreciate the depth of the Sharia, then you become really well grounded. But one never stops learning, one never stops reading. Fortunately, our teachers have given us a path of each subject in each science, and we should try and follow that as much as possible. One nugget that I will give to you is one nugget that I will give to you is that find high quality teachers, high caliber teachers. If it means you have to pay them, find the best teachers. If it means you have to travel them, go and sit with those teachers. Okay, nothing can replace good teachers. Once you're really advanced, then you can start to read books. I don't really have books, Roshan, that I can recommend. Um, People have their own favorite books, but I think books are important once you're really advanced. And then eventually, what you need to do, Roshan, is be able to write. We need writers and thinkers. So that's some helpful advice, I hope, for you. Akbarian thought. I love how people are becoming more religious. May Allah help and guide us all to understand His law. Yeah, so when we talk about religious, I don't know what that means because, does it mean that people are praying more? Does it mean that people are going to the masjid more? People are covering up more? It's all positive signs. These are alamat, these are signs that something good is happening, and we should not discount that. At the same time, we should be cautious, joyously cautious, that what really matters is depth. What really matters is a deep understanding with revelation. And so we need Muslims who are learning all the time. I've said before that everyone should be learning. Every Muslim should be studying in some way, shape, or form about their religion with mashayikh, with teachers. So I think the important thing is that we're learning. Important thing is we're continuously developing ourselves. Uh, Aside from our work commitments. We have jobs, we have family, children, but we should all be learning and we should find good quality teachers. And this Q&A session that we have every Friday, it's not really learning, but it helps you to gain some experiences that I have to share perhaps with you, which might be useful in your own personal journey. Again, Sheikh Al-Akbar Muhyiddin Na'uri said, may Allah give me and you understanding of the intents of law and let not what is apparent veil us on what is invisible. Ibn Arabi obviously is much misunderstood. You need to have a depth which very few people have to understand Ibn Arabi. But we ask Allah to grant us a deep understanding in His religion, not just a superficial understanding. We should know why we do things. If someone asks you, why do you do wudu? Why do you pray? Why do you sacrifice animals? Why do you get married? Why do you have to give a mahr, for example, when you give married or marriage? What's the purpose of that? All these things, you should be able to bring it all together, inshallah ta'ala. SN وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته أهلا وسهلا مرحبا بكم ما شاء الله تعالى. uh, is permissible to call someone a prophet who's not mentioned in Quran or Hadith? Best to avoid because you don't have a basis for it. Unless you have a basis for someone calling someone a prophet, then it's best to avoid if you're not certain. If in doubt, don't jump into the pool of confusion. If you're doubtful, you don't know, then it's best to stay away. That's always a good rule to follow, unless one has reasons to believe he's a prophet. Okay, so you know from some hadith that XYZ prophet, XY person was a prophet, then that's fine. Khabbab and Khubayb mean in Arabic. Huzaifa, mashallah. I need to find out. Let me try and find out for you, and get back to you on that. Try and find some insights, meanings of Khabbab and Khubayb for you. See what I come up with. Maybe I'll look in the Arabic dictionary later on. Yeah, I'm going to look into Khabbab. Let's have a look. See what comes up. Okay. So, of course, it's named after the companion Khabbab ibn Arat, who died in 660. And he was a companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Let's see, Khabbab bin Arat. Let's see what they say about him. Sahabi. Okay, that's in Persian. Okay, I'll try and find out for you, inshallah. Give me some time and look into it for you. All right. Let's have a look at Akbar is taking over the channel today, mashallah. For example, Ibn Kathir and many other people call people like Jeremiah, Daniel. Oh. We can say that there's some truth in it, but it doesn't make a difference in your aqidah or anything. It doesn't make a difference in your faith. Unless you have a reason for doing it, it's best to avoid it, but you can say these things. Okay, can layman Muslim learn philosophy? If yes, This requires a little bit of explanation. Falsafa, philosophy, there are different types of philosophy. I would always caution Muslims, based on my engagement with the Muslim community, that um, that they should probably learn about their religion first. So they should learn sound aqidah, belief, creed. How do you prove, for example, is the existence of God and all of these other things that are part of our creed? And then they should dabble with philosophy, and they should take proper philosophy people that are useful. In many ways, we already do philosophy when we think. When you start thinking, the moment you start thinking, you're doing philosophy. The moment you start thinking for yourself, you try to understand what's going on, then you're already engaged in philosophy. So philosophy is a very important science, and in Islamic tradition, it was we have some great minds who engage in philosophy. Of course, one of the great minds is Imam Ghazali, rahimahullah ta'ala. But he's not the only one. There are many, 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 many ulama who are scholars, excellent scholars, great minds, who wrote great works, but they were also philosophers of the highest degree. Sadly, Muslims don't know their great minds, their own scholars. So maybe one day someone funds and supports us, we could do a series on YouTube where we go through philosophy and we go through people like Ibn Sina, known as Avicenna in the West, and we go through many, many Ibn Al-Farabi, many, many others. We could go through them, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, okay. No rush, inshallah. I will look into it for you. Just harass me if I don't. Huzaifa, Huzi, I think you mean Huzaifa, Huzi Patel. Most likely a Gujarati. Nice to have few Gujaratis. You don't feel lonely. Um, Roshan's back again. In one of your live streams, you said you studied the Futuhat with an Akbarian scholar who was talking. Who was you talking about? I can't give his name. Um, this is like one of the, if you like, let me try and tease you a bit. This is like studying knowledge. That's not for everyone. Okay, and the teacher who is a master taught us some of these things. Some of these things you don't talk about in public because people are not able to understand these things. They do kufr on you because most people, most Muslims, rightly, have a very, they just need to know enough to get to Jannah. But we need ulama, we need people who are able to think at an abstract, higher level for us. So the Futuhat, Hujjatullah, Ghazali, Ihya, all these books, I mean, all of them are masterpieces of the Islamic intellectual tradition. Um, if I want to give sadaqah because my relative is ill, what is the right way? Just give sadaqah in a masjid, lillah. Give it to charity, make dua for them, give sadaqah in their name. And it's as simple as that. There's nothing difficult there, I hope. Um, and Allah grant them shifa, kamila, da'ima, mustamirra, complete cure, prolonged cure, and the one that becomes a means of elevating their status. Because we know that when a person is afflicted with something, one of two things will happen for a believer. Allah will either erase their sins, and if you're really pious, like some of you, mashallah, Allah will then elevate your maqam. Because difficulties in this world are light in comparison to difficulties in the life to come. So it's from the mercy of God that He puts you through what seems like a trial and tribulation for a believer, but actually it's a form of mercy when you really think about it, because what it's doing is it's cleansing you, it's purifying you. So this is why lots of people, pious people, they fall ill before the end of their lives. Allah is elevating their status. And so as believers, we believe fundamentally that God is the owner of everything and He owns us, and He can do whatever He wishes to us. But out of His mercy, out of His generosity, His Jude, His Rahmah, He will do what's best for us. He will do what's best for us. This is called maslaha. So sometimes we don't understand the wisdom of God, but there's always some wise purpose behind it. So if you take the example of Ibrahim in the Quran, the nature of fire is to burn. God created everything with essence. God created everything with a habit of how it performs. So fire is to burn. Um, and Allah decreed that for all of His creation. Human beings have certain purposes. Flowers, trees, everything has a purpose. and when it fulfills what it was created for, it's the best of creation. So a knife, its purpose is to cut. So if it cuts really well, it's a brilliant knife. Um, and so on with many, many examples. But if it's used for the wrong ends, then that makes it evil. So, for example, if a knife, which is a cause to cut something, is used for what it's created for, that's husn, that's good. But when it's used, usually by human agency, by us, in a immoral or incorrect way, then it creates problems, and that's when it becomes evil because of its actions. But something can also become good. So Allah Subhanahu wa Taala decreed through His wisdom that Abraham should not be killed, and so the fire became cool for him. Bardan wa salaman ala Ibrahim, which also shows to us that God is not exalted be He is not bound by any rules like we are. So he decided or he decreed that the fire should not burn. And it became the opposite of what it normally does, which is that it became cool for him. And there was a greater purpose in this, the wisdom, which made it good, which was that, of course, that fire became the coolness for him. But that coolness was also a metaphorical expression that God gave him children afterwards, which is a form of coolness. When you have children, they're a form of coolness for you. So there's a metaphor somewhere in there, hidden in there somewhere. And then, of course, from Abraham, alayhi salam, Allah granted the greatest of mankind to humanity, which was the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So sometimes we see things in the moment, but if we look at things in grand history, or what's called a teleological argument, this is teleology, this is grand purpose behind everything, then we realize that actually what we see as wrong or immoral might not necessarily be wrong or immoral in the grand scheme of things. So we shouldn't be stuck in the moment, of course. We should live the moment, enjoy the moment, but we should realize that there's a grand scheme, there's a plan behind everything. The Quran is filled with this. Quran is filled with what I would call sort of teleological arguments about, there's something happening with the Prophet Yusuf. You're reading the story, you see lots of bad things happening to him, and all of a sudden things change for him. Things turn around. And God inverts the world for him, and there's a bigger purpose in all of this. There's a grand narrative on all of this. Paul, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan. I hope you're well. I hope you're in London having fun down south, the southerners, and you're making dua for us northerners. I hope you're well. MashaAllah ta'ala. Always lovely to have you. Even if you're just here for a few seconds, your presence is always most welcome. Please do follow Paul if you don't already. He has some excellent content. I'm a very bad friend in that he's asked me to come on his channel and I haven't always been forthcoming. So maybe I should come on his channel again at some point. A wonderful channel, excellent work, important work. And so we ask Allah to protect him and to preserve him and to allow him to continue with his good work. Keep up the good work, Paul, inshallah ta'ala. So you got salam from SN. Paul, we try our best. We try to become excellent friends. I try to be a good friend, not always perfect, always falling short, but we try our best to maintain good relationships. One of the things I like about Paul a lot, of many of the things, is that he's just interested in getting knowledge out there, and getting scholars and great minds and people who are thinking to a wider audience, which is what we need. Sometimes scholars or students of knowledge can remain in their little ivory towers and read their books without always engaging with the public. So it's wonderful that Paul has become a vehicle by which knowledge percolates into wider society, which is what we need to do. And that's why all of you are important. I say to my friends that I'm stuck in my office or in my room reading, but my reading is only as good as it has an impact on wider society. So knowledge should always be productive, should be effective, inshallah, should affect people. This is what Imam Ghazali said. Many of the ulama said that knowledge is an awakening. If you seek knowledge for the right reasons, it gives you an awakening, it gives you a hal. Hal is a state of being in the world, and then it should then result in change. The Prophet ﷺ received revelation. It became very, very, very burdensome upon him. It became a responsibility on him, and he had a hal, he had a state that I need to do something. And of course, the first person that comforted him was a woman, Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha. But he didn't just stay in that moment. He didn't, he wasn't stuck, as we say in English, like a cat in front of the headlights, just startled. He started to make change and shifts in society. And this is something that we should all be doing, making the world a better place, working towards making the world a better place, because we have to act in the moment. A lot of times we end up just fighting, arguing, being negative. Um, what we need to do is be productive. I don't mean productive in a sort of Western sort of economic sense, GDP. I don't mean that way. What I mean is we need to be effective. We need to change people. We need to change the way people think. And that happens through all of you collectively working together for the greater good. You can criticize people, and you should, but it should be done out of a place of sincerity and a place of maslah. One should not throw other Muslims in front of the bus, if you like, the proverbial bus, or under the bus. But one should try and give them nasiha. If you feel someone is doing something wrong, then reach out to them, or speak to someone who can help you. Amar bil ma'ruf, nahi al munkar. Enjoining good, forbidding evil is part of our religion. Imam Ghazali has a chapter on it. Many ulama have written upon it. It has its rules, it has its adab of how you're supposed to do it. But also remember that most of us are living in non-Muslim lands, so the fiqh becomes a little bit more different for us. Most of our texts were written when Muslims were sovereign, they were powerful, and they were in charge. People like me, many of you are living in lands and places where Muslims are not sovereign. We are citizens, so we don't completely disengage with our religion, but we engage with our religion. We use our religion creatively, and think about what the ulama were actually thinking about when they said things. What was the broader philosophy? As someone asked at the beginning, what was the broader philosophy behind all of these things? So we should be asking these questions. We should be thinking Muslims who think all the time. And our religion will not wither away, will not disappear if we start thinking about our faith. It becomes stronger. And I guess the example I've given before is the example of Abraham, the archetypal Abraham, who was really a thinking person. And Islam we as Muslims never feel insecure or should not feel insecure. Yes, because of our lack of sovereignty and our political weakness, we feel a sense of weakness right now. But inshallah, if we are confident, if we have iman, as Allah mentions in the Quran, if you have faith, belief, action, knowledge, then that can only strengthen you. And you can make, like I said to you before, you can make sense of everything. So you see what's happening in the world right now, and you're saying, well, there's a great purpose behind it. I'm stuck in the 21st century. I'm just seeing things as they are. But tomorrow, Allah can change things. Allah can create a better world. And we've seen this time and time again. Inshallah, Paul, hope to see you soon, bismillah ta'ala, on the channel. So I think this is the way we should think about things. We should think about the metaphysics, the bigger narrative, the teleology. And the Quran does this. When you think about the Quran carefully, Allah will give you stories, individual stories, but then He will also, when you take a step back, He will tell you, well, read the story and look what happens at the beginning, look what happens in the middle. What's a greater narrative? Look at the story of Moses. What happened with Moses, how he started, he had fear. The Quran talks about his fear quite a lot. Allah talks about his fear. But eventually he was able to conquer his fear. You should read the Quran like this. And eventually he was able to take his nation across. The sea opened up for him. And that's also a metaphor for Allah opening up things for you. Like things seem difficult. You see an ocean in front of you, and you're like, how do I get past this? And eventually you have to conquer your fear. You have to be brave. And then that's what happened in the story of Musa, Yusuf, I talked about, Abraham. So all these prophets, they are there to give us strength, to give us belief that things will change, and we must believe that things will change. I'm not sure about this. I had a question regarding idols. Prophet ﷺ ordered the idols of Arabia to be destroyed. Why didn't the companions not? Why didn't the companions? You mean destroy? There's two negatives there. Why didn't the companions destroy the idols in Egypt and Levant? I'm not sure. I need to find out if this actually did happen or didn't happen. Can you give me some references or share some references on this? Um, Maybe it just wasn't a priority at the time. Maybe because Arabia was, main reason would be that Arabia was meant to be a place of Darul Islam, and Islam was to be the sovereign there, and there was no, there should be no remnants of anything to do with idolatry, idolic practices. Everyone had become Muslim. Whereas on these other lands, on the fringes, I assume, knowing a little bit of history that I know, it would have been very, very simple, which is that this idea that they would have been engaging with non-Muslims and people who chose not to become Muslim. Remember that people are not forced to become Muslims. If they choose not to become Muslim, then they can practice their faith as long as it doesn't impact societal harmony. So Islam is sovereign. So you find this in India, Hindustan. Hindus still existed. They were living under Muslim rule. Muslims never got rid of their idols. They let them have their idols. You can do what you want, but we're going to look after you. You pay us the tax. We'll protect your lands and all these things. So this actually shows the opposite, that in these places, Muslims developed a sophisticated theory of tolerance. And I don't mean tolerance like we have today, where you're allowed to practice your faith, but we are going to tell you you must obey the laws of our land. Islamic tolerance was very, very different, where people were allowed to practice their own laws. Jews, Christians, others, they had their own Sharia, and they were living under Muslim rule, and it was very favorable to them, and they were allowed to practice. I mean, you don't get that today. If I'm living in England, they may say they're tolerant, but I'm not allowed to practice my faith, in the sense that I'm not allowed to have my own laws, follow the Islamic law, the Sharia. I have to follow laws of the land. So you tell me which system is better? A system that allows people of different faiths to freely practice their faith, and they are protected by the Muslims in addition. Whereas here we try and create this idea that we're all tolerant, when in reality some groups have preference over others, and we don't really have freedom of faith in that sense. But Muslims really embodied freedom of faith. Jews, Christians were allowed to have their churches and allowed to practice their faith, and their own disputes they would resolve it amongst themselves. This is what would happen. You don't have anything, you need to find something for me then. Yeah, you find something for me, inshallah. Beautiful, Alhamdulillah, wonderful. Seeing you all, and I hope you're all well. And if you need anything, get back in touch, inshallah ta'ala. Hopefully, I don't have anything planned, so we can meet next week, same time, same place, inshallah ta'ala. Have a wonderful weekend. Everybody stay safe, and hopefully, I'll see you next week. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.